Okay, so the war against Oakland owners of duplexes, triplexes continue. So earlier this year, if you haven't paid attention, what basically happened was there was a real estate agent that got caught in undercover news channel, undercover camera, one of those
We
segments.
don't have a clip for that, do we?
No, we don't. But basically, just to give you a little history, the agent was doing an open house. The undercover person came in and basically asked the agent point blank, "Well, I'm looking to move into one of the units. How can I evict people out of this triplex?" And the agent went on, uh, completely giving bad information, but completely went on to basically just say, "Oh yeah, you can evict so and so, you can evict them, it's super easy, you just move in, no problem," and basically making it seem like a piece of cake to simply kick someone out into the street. This made it into the news. This
In fact, the person that she was telling and giving this information to was recording the entire thing
correct.
with a hidden
And
camera.
not to mention that the tenant was 10 feet away on her living room
Right.
couch. So anyway, this sparked a big debate at the city council between tenants, landlords, because historically, when you're a owner of a duplex, triplex, and you want to move into one of the units, you can simply follow their process. But it's a much easier process to follow, and many of the rules that Just Cause comes into play don't apply to duplex and triplexes. Well, that changed in March, and City Council basically corrected that. They were calling it a loophole, but that was fixed.
It
Now
creates a
this
lot
is
of other problems too, because people who are buying house duplex, triplex, or fourplex, up to a fourplex, they're usually doing so with owner-occupied financing that in itself requires them to move into one of the units. Now, granted, there are people like this lady who was just scamming and trying to use this loophole, if you want, or whatever you want to call it, of owner occupancy to be able to illegally kick people out. Maybe she didn't have any real intention of living there. But the fact is that it's a requirement that a buyer who is buying one of these individual types of up to a 4-unit building live in the place for a while, right? But now that's going to create various issues with their loan, especially because of the level of strengthening that they've had for Just Cause and being able to close this loophole because of the impression that this agent gave on how to exploit the loophole.
Yeah. So that's what happened earlier this year. Now, what many people did not also know is that rent control, when an owner is living inside one of the units of a duplex, triplex, rent control does not apply to those other units. And so that was the second part of what they call a loophole that they wanted to close up. And so basically, that's what this entire battle, it just continues. And tenants basically petitioned the city of Oakland to eliminate that loophole, and now rent control applies to duplexes and triplexes in which an owner resides in one of the units.
Yeah. In fact, what they don't really show a lot of is the other side of that is the majority of owners that are living in a duplex, a triplex, or a fourplex, they are dependent on that additional income to help pay their mortgage. And they're not some, big, gigantic, evil landlord. In fact, there were a few years back when rent control was coming to Richmond, a group called ACE, I believe, which is a pro-tenant group, protested outside of a little old lady's house.
She was 82 years old.
82 years old, basically was threatening and intimidating this owner, 82-year-old woman who lived in her home because she was attempting to evict a tenant from her duplex, or it might have been a triplex. Do you recall what it was?
It was a four-unit
Oh, the
building.
4-unit building.
4-unit building, and she was attempting to evict one of the tenants who was behind 2 months on rent.
Right, and she would have had every right to do so. In fact, the Just Cause would have been in effect, even had that law. That at the time the law wasn't in place, but had it been in effect, that there would have been issues that would have allowed her to do that, if not for the fact that you had this group intimidating her. And that's usually, they never show that side, but they always show the other side of it, where somebody does ruin it for everybody else and exploit the law, and then now it makes it that much more difficult to protect the individuals who those laws were made for, namely the small landlord dependent on that additional rental unit to help pay their mortgage, which makes it a lot more difficult when you try to evict somebody who's not paying, and now the law has so much more teeth behind it.
Yeah, and many people don't realize, many tenants don't realize that property owners have so many expenses that they have to deal with. Just quickly, they have increasing garbage bills, increasing water bills, additional tax supplements and assessments that are added to their property tax bill. I mean, those are just a few. Then you have repairs, maintenance, and it just goes on and on. But speaking of the few that are bad, that ruin it for everyone else, let's see